Hello everyone, and welcome to another tier list video. Today I will try to give you my ideas about the current meta, about where I see all the divisions in the tier list. I made this video because Time to Collision made a project about getting all the community together again to make a tier list that is more general for what the community thinks about it, and he also asked me, so I gave him my tier list. But I also wanted to talk about why I made the tier list the way I do it, and also maybe show you what I think differently from the community tier lists. We will also have a short look onto that one in the end, but if you want to have more information about it, check out the Time to Collisions channel down in the description, and check out his video that is supposed to come out relatively soon as well. For now, let's jump right in here into making my personal tier list, which is based on my experience as a caster and as a player, and obviously is biased, but I try to give an argument for why divisions end up in the tier they will end up. So first, we start with 10th Tank Corps, and that is an A tier division. It is one of the latest additions to Steel Division. It was in the second Nemesis DLC pack, and it has a well-rounded combination of tanks. It has solid enough amount of infantry, and all of the other tabs are also good enough to give it an A tier slot. It is a well-rounded division, and if it gets left open in league bans, it is a worthwhile pick. It is not one of the top A tier divisions, I would say, but it is still pretty well-rounded. And now we come to, since my last tier list video, a division that changed quite a bit since then, without actually getting any buffs itself, and that is 116th Windhorn, one of my favorite divisions. And armored divisions, especially German armored divisions, since then have become quite a bit more popular, and that is the reason why I put it in B tier. It is a really, really strong division there, and it should do pretty well if you pick it. It can show up in League. It has the cheap Panzer force. It has quite a lot of half-tracks, which are currently a big part of the meta. It has solid AA and planes, and a lot of off-map. So a lot of good arguments for it. It also has armored cars, but no Pumas or so like Panzer there. So that's a small iffy, but everything else in this division is really well rounded, which is why I put it in B tier. It does just not have the punch of other divisions maybe, and it has Panthers, no King Tigers or so. So as you want to leave the Panthers out as much as possible, all your tanks will be Panzer Force, which is fine, but it's not like you want to have a bit more versatility in your tank tab. That's maybe the thing missing, plus the infantry tab is a bit limited as well. Not enough CQC infantry or so in there. Now we come to 12th SS, and that is A tier, because unlike 116th, it also has a really good air tab with Fokker Wolves, which are still really, really good. It has Flak 41s, quite a couple of them as well, which since the buff in availability also have become quite popular. And it is just, on the right map, an insanely hard division to beat. If you get a Slutsk West or so, then this division is just really tough to beat. And even on the normal map, it is a good division nowadays. The Fanatic trait helps out for its infantry. It's not the most amazing trait, but it is helpful for their Panzer Grenadiers. So that's a nice addition, and it is really just a good division. It has armored cars, it has Panzer Force as well, obviously. It has a solid support tab, it has a good AA tab, and sure, artillery tab is, but even there it has the right tools to deal with stuff. So far, all the three divisions we have seen so far are good picks in League. But now we come to a division that is not so much a good pick. We have seen it actually a couple of times, and it has been picked against IS-2 divisions because it has a counter unit against that. But other than this, the 122nd is just not a solid division in the current meta. It is an infantry division, does only rely on Stuks in the tank tab, and Stuks are just not good right now if you have to rely on them solely. They're nice as a support tank. We will come to that in future divisions, but if they have to take the roles as tank in every situation where you want to have tanks. They're just not good for that. They're not a good all-rounder. So that's why I would put them in D tier currently. Then we have 122nd, which has come up to C tier in my eyes because of the buff with now giving KV 85s and so on in C tier, in C phase. So that's what puts them in C tier. Because if you get into a late game situation, you're not completely screwed anymore. And they still have the good air, they still have really good infantry. So 2 really good tabs there. And the artillery tab is also nice with their really cheap artillery that actually has radio, which is also pretty rare on the Soviet side. So that's why I would put them in C tier. They're still an infantry division that can get overrun pretty heavily by any tank division out there. So that's why they're still only C tier. They are a counter pick on specific maps against specific divisions, and on something like Cell, you have to be worried when you have to play against them. But other than that, they are a solid division, but nothing still nothing amazing. They are playable now, but just so. So here we come to 14th, which is a bit behind that, I would say. It's also a good division, but it's not it's also just a mediocre division, not good. It has done pretty decently lately, from what I've seen, but I mean, it has fallen off from grace since the STG 44 nerf in 2019, and it hasn't recovered from that at all since then. It is a nice all-rounder division, but it is not amazing in anything, so that's why C tier is where it fits. It still beats 122nd in my eyes, but it's not really that great. And now we come to my first maybe controversial pick, because 15 Scots in my eyes at the moment is an S tier division. And let me tell you why. First of all, rifles are still really good. Infantry 420 points. They're sure come in a bit lower numbers by now, but that's okay. Then you have your Typhoons. And Typhoons are just insanely good. They are one of the best airplanes at the moment. Everyone talks about the Focke-Wulf, everyone talks about the Tempest, but Typhoons are just a bit behind or even next to Focke-Wulfs. And so you have a really good air tab. Next, AT tab. 6-pounders since the APCR nerf buff are really good again. They were never really bad. Sure, the nerf 2 availability was a bit of a bad one, but since they got the APCR buff, they're back on top of the AT gun game. Then you have your artillery tab, which has 25-pounders that you could use. That is one of the few artillery pieces that actually is viable. And then you have a whole of lot of off-map, which is really good. And then you come to the tank tab, where you have a lot of Churchills. And Churchills are the best medium tank killers in the game at the moment. So, ones that are good again, Panzer IVs, the ones with 90, 100. And the other ones are really good against Germans, the ones with the 6-pounder gun. So, if you combine them two, you can just murder all the medium tanks on the battlefield. And sure, they're a bit slow, but at the moment the speed is not the most important part in the game. And you also have the recon armored cars to deal with the issue of running into any half-tracks or so. So overall, I see them as S tier. They can destroy the Sherman divisions. They have the airplay to force anyone into attacking them. They have also a solid AA tab thanks to Bofors. So just all around an amazing division that I think a lot of people are sleeping on at the moment. It is a bit different to play, and that's why people don't touch it as much, but I think if you put a bit of time into it, it is just paying off insanely, because also the ban rate at the moment on it is really, really low for the power level it has. So yes, don't sleep on 15 Scots, get in the game there. Then we get to another A tier division. We get to 16th Panzer, and this one is really strong, thanks to Focke-Wulf, thanks to Panzer IVs. Here you also get Stokes, but the Stokes are a support unit in this deck. You don't have to rely on them only, so that's what makes them different from all the infantry division. And You get the King Tigers, obviously, which on the right map, like it's Slutsk West or so on, are just insanely hard to beat, especially as you also get the Flak 41s to protect them, and the Fokker Wolves to protect them from airplay. So J87s, D5s, or IL-2 cluster bombers should never get through against you. And your infantry tab is on the lower end, but you get half-tracks for everything, and with that being the case at the moment, this division is scary, and that's why it also has a really high ban rate at the moment, and it is beatable. It is not quite cost efficient enough in my eyes to give it an S tier, but it is a division that you have to be worried about if you see the enemy banning its counter picks or the map is really in favor of it, then you should consider banning it yourself as well. Now we come to a division that was always one of my favorites, but I didn't knew where to put it. And seeing it lately in the league and seeing it also in ranked and playing it myself in ranked, I would say 17th SS is just on the end of A tier. It's not as high, quite as high as 12th SS or 16th Panzer, but it is a really, really good division. And the only thing holding it back, again, is its tank tab. It's a Panzer Grenadier division. It relies only on Stuk Force, but at least it's not Stuk 3s, it's Stuk Force. They have the extra 100 frontal armor, the extra 10mm up to 100. And that makes a big difference against Shermans in a 1v1 fight, a big difference against Panzer IVs in a 1v1 fight, and also obviously against T-34s. So that means that they can rely a bit better on their tank tab, but they don't have to. They have an amazing anti-tank tab. They have a really good recon tab with recon cars as well. Their air has one of the last remaining Ju-87 G1s in the game, which is a insanely good AT plane. And it has a ME-109 with a 30mm, which means it actually deals a lot of damage, and it's decently fast as well. And then you also have a really good infantry tab, SS Legionaries and Panzer Grenadiers, and cheaper Panzer Grenadiers. So you get what you want there as well. You get your CQC infantry. Panzer Grenadiers, since the MG42 buff, are viable as well. You get a solid support tab as well, and your AA tab is decent. In your artillery tab, you have the off map that you need. You have Nebelwerfer 42, which can be useful as well at the moment. You see them a lot in League as well. You have Nebelwerfer 41s, but don't touch them. Nebelwerfer 41s are still really shitty, but Nebelwerfer 42s are decent. They can destroy tanks. They can destroy AA guns, so have an eye out on that. And the most important thing that makes them viable as well as an A-tier division, obviously, is the traction. The 115 kilometers on the road means they just get this advantage in A phase in the beginning that you don't get with other divisions, with other infantry divisions especially, because it is really important that you get into the right positions as an infantry division, because you're not as maneuverable as the tank divisions, and the tractions really allow you that with 17th SS, which is it's called the Panzer Grenadier divisions, but it's more of an infantry division because it doesn't get any half tracks or so. So let's move on to 184th, and it was a good division back in the day, but it really isn't at the moment. It just can't deal with half tanks really well. It can't deal with medium tanks really well, and this times of the just pure infantry spam are over. So this division has fallen off with that. It is a C-tier division. It is not as bad as other divisions. It still gets really good infantry spam. It has stewards and so on that are okay, but it's just not good anymore. So I would put it behind 14th. I would put it behind 126. It is a solid division, but it is just not amazing. And it really has fallen off from grace there. Now we got to a new boy in the house, and I'm still not quite sure where to put it. It has a lot of strengths, but it also has a glaring weakness. And this division is the first Fallschirmjäger. It has a solid air tab. Issue in the air tab is it doesn't have any AT weaponry, and that will come up again. It has a really good artillery tab, thanks to the radio on the mortars. Radio mortars are just really, really, really strong, especially as you get them for the same price basically as normal mortars in this deck. And then your AT tab is meh, but you can live with it, I would say. It's a bit too limited though, like it has a bit too few slots to be really amazing, and it also misses the second card of Jagdpanzers. Nashorns are nice, but not really what you want. Then the support tab gets the LG42, gets MG42s as well, so everything fine here. But then comes your tank tab that only has Tigers and only gets no veterancy, and you don't get extra availability on the veterancy ones. And that is a big issue. Tigers are not currently part of the meta. We will have to see how the range rework changes that, but they are not at the moment. And getting them in low numbers means that you just don't get enough tanks. So you really have to play around that, and if the enemy has too many medium tanks, you will struggle a hell of a lot. But then comes the next big plus, the Infantry tab. And the Infantry tab is just amazing, because unlike a third FJ, you get the amazing FJs, but you don't have to fully rely on that, because in addition to that, you get 3 cards of Grenadiers with MG42. And since the MG42 buff, it's a really good weapon, and it lifts up the normal Grenadiers with MG34s to just another level, as you get them for the same price and then the same availability. So I'm still struggling on this one. I would put it in the end of B tier at the moment, because it's just too many. It struggles just too much with tanks and so on. So that's why I would put it in B tier, but I could also see it going lower or higher over time. Now, another division that got buffed lately, that I would have put into C tier before, even though it has Shermans, but is B tier now. And that is, since the buff, Panzari, first Panzerna. It has a solid air tab, it has gotten the buffs on their Achilleses and Fireflies, which make them way more viable now. And it has Shermans, obviously. So, there you go. It has a Shermans, and Shermans are always good. So, yeah, B tier it is. Now we come to another really, really good division. We come to the other first Polish, the Tierlist. And this is a division I still think is amazing. It fell off from craze. It was an S tier before. It is now only A tier. It is now not in the top of A tier anymore either, but it is still really, really strong, because its cost efficiency is insane. It still has really good IL-2s that got a bit more pricey, but not really a big deal breaker there. It still has a lot of T-34 76s. Sure, they are weaker than Panzer IVs, sure they are weaker than Shermans, but they're still part of the medium tank meta, which makes it still good. They got Su-76s and Su-85s, which, thanks to the buffs they received to the guns and to the hit points, are really, really good anti-tank weapons. And then they are one of the few Soviet divisions that kept all their SVTs. And SVTs are just really good rifles. Sure, their infantry got a bit more pricey for it, but their infantry still has a heavy punch. And if you are not careful, and if you don't take their infantry seriously, it will just run you over. And that's why I would say it's still an A-tier division. Also, the recon tab is just fine. You get Su-57, 75s. 57? 57, yeah. So, it's all fine there as well. And it is an A-tier division. It's just really scary in its cost efficiency still. Then we come to second Pliny Day, which is a B-tier division. And that is thanks to having a lot of half tracks, having solid Shermans, but being a bit low on both. You don't have the jumbo like in 3rd US, and your infantry is not as good as 3rd US ones either, and you are a bit low on infantry overall, so that's a bit of an issue there. M8s are just not good. The meme is nice, but they're not good. Your air tab has the DB-73, which obviously is a really scary bomber, but your AA is not that good. Spitfire fighters are decent, but not amazing either. So it has Shermans, it has good bomber, it has solid infantry, but you have to be careful with how much you want to play it, plus half tracks in good amounts as well. So it is B tier. It is for sure. If the A and S tier divisions that you want to play get banned, then Pliny Day is the way to go on League. And on Ranked, you also can get a really good win rate of it. I played a lot with it lately again with their recon smoke bombers, which is an underused tool in my eyes. Especially as the enemy never knows what the hell is going on when it happens. They don't have a clue how to play against it. So if you figured a bit out how you want to play with it, then you get a big advantage out of a 60-point unit there. But it is just not quite having the punch of the A-tier divisions in my eyes, and it is a bit too easy to be countered by just turtling against it and just defending, because it needs to be aggressive. And now we come to a division that shows way too often in the league, in my eyes. It should stay in team games, it should stay in 10v10s where it belongs to, and that is 20th Panzer Grenadier. The only thing that this deck has going for it are its amazing 2 AA units. The flak-feeling Panther and the flak-feeling T-34, which obviously have insane damage output, and thanks to their armor also can deal maybe with medium tanks on 1000 meter range, but other than that, this deck is just not cost efficient enough, not mobile enough. I don't know why people play it. It is a meme division in my eyes, and it should belong into the meme tier that is C. It is not quite D because of the killing Panthers and T-34s, but you should really stay away from it, especially in league play, where A and B is usually where the divisions come from. Sometimes S tier, if someone messes up their banning. Now, we come to the best German tank division so far, and that is 20th Panzer. And it shows also in the pick and ban phase in the league, because this division gets banned a hell of a lot. And if it doesn't get banned, it also gets picked a hell of a lot. It is the most picked division so far in the league, and it gives... The reasons for it are cheap infantry, especially since it got cheaper Panzer Grenadiers as well, and a lot of infantry. And then you get a lot of good medium tanks. You get a mix of medium tanks as well. You get T-34s, you get Panzer IVs, so you can choose there as well. And the Boy to Stalin is a nice cherry on top. Sure, you only get one, but most of the time you don't need too many IS-2s. It's just there for keeping that field clean, that one big field on the map where you need a big boy. And there you get your IS-2, and it's helpful. Then you get the best AA gun in the game. The Flak 43 is just insanely good. And your air tap is okay. It's not the best. G2s are a bit low on damage output, but they are at least quick ME109s, so that is helpful. And the rest of the air tap is also just fine. You have all the tools you need to deal with enemy there. So that is why I would put it in 8 here. It's just one of the most cost-efficient German decks out there. And now we come to the real Swiss Army knife of the German tank divisions, and which is just one step better because it also has one more number, but that is 21st Panzer. 21st Panzer has Shermans, has Panzer IVs, has cheap infantry, not as much as 20th, that's their small mistake there, but it has good AA. It has Rheinwerfers and so on in the artillery tab, which are really helpful, plus some off maps. And then you have also the Focke-Wulfs in the air tab. And another big plus above 20th is that you have recon cars. You have recon armored cars, which is the biggest weakness of 20th, that it doesn't have these. To deal with half tracks, to deal with infantry in light forest, and so on. So really helpful there for 21st. And there's a reason why this division is banned a hell of a lot. Whenever there's a somewhat open map, you should get rid of this division, because otherwise this division will get rid of you. So have your eyes on 21st. Now we go into 25th Panzer Grenadier, and that one I would put down here. See, here we go. It is having armored cars. It has Panzer Grenadiers and so on, but just doesn't have anything super special. Its tank tab is Stooks. Sure, it has some Stook 4s as well, but that's just not enough to get it up there. It just doesn't have the nice extra that 17th SS has. Like, it's similar there, but it just all the pluses that 17th gets on top, 25th doesn't. So it is just that boring kid at school, it feels like. It has the armored cars, and that's its only bigger plus. That's what keeps it from D tier of being a super boring, weak infantry division, but it is still only C tier. Then we come to 26, which is a division that we don't see too much anymore. And the reason is, I guess it's AA tab, even though it's AA tab by now got in a solid state as well, thanks to the ZSU M15 buff. So I'm not quite sure why we see it so little. KVs are still destroying Shermans. You still have the IS-1, which is a good tank as well. And it has still the infantry spam. So I'm not quite sure why M26 is picked so little. Maybe people just forgot about it existing. Because it's actually, it is in front of 21st. Doesn't have Shermans, but it can deal with Shermans. So it's even close here. I would maybe put it even in front of 1st Panzer here. Yeah, that's where I would place it at the moment. Because just better than these two. And it is an underused division. It doesn't have enough half tracks and so on to be considered A tier at the moment. It just doesn't have what is currently the hot meta, but it is still a really, really scary division, and we should see it more often again. Then we come to 28 Jaeger. And this is a B tier division as well. It has the best infantry units in the game at the moment. 20-point Jaegers with an MG42, with really good CQC capabilities as well. And also the G34s to at least give it also a bit more medium firepower when the enemy engages you on medium range. Are just really good. And then you have Fokker Wolves in the air tab. And your only big weakness really is the AT department once more, which at the moment is what is the deal breaker, why it isn't top tier, which was before when Fokker Wolf fighter bombers were really good, and the infantry meta was still ongoing before the half-track MGs got buffed. Now it's fallen off to B tier again, but it is still really scary. And Wesley showed, sure he lost against Shadow Boy, but he showed why it is still a really, really good deck, and you have to be worried when you play against it. Now we come to 29th, and I'm not quite sure where to place this. This is one of the divisions I'm having problems with. I kind of want to put it in B tier as well, but I'm not quite sure where here. I would put it here, I guess. It has T-45s, it has IS-2s, it has half-tracks. But it just doesn't feel that strong still. It only still seems to be the smaller brother of the 3rd Guards Tank Corps, which at the moment isn't a bad thing because 3rd Guards Tank Corps is insanely strong, but it's still just a small brother. So pick it if you want to get a Soviet tank division that is decent, but don't be too hyped about it. It's just, it's a good division, but that's why it's B tier. Now, 2nd Indianhead, which is the leader of the B tier bunch in my eyes. It could be A tier as well. Like, it's really close between A and B here in my head, how I rank them. It has Germans, but its infantries have fallen a bit off since they got nerfed. It has mortars with radio. Its air tab is good, as it has medium resilience fighters and so on, but they are not the best. So that's a meh. And then in the AT tab, I love the Hellcats. I wish they would perform a bit better, but somehow they don't perform as good as I expected them to do. So that's why it is only B tier, but it is the best B tier, because Hellcats are still hell of a scary unit, especially if you know what you do with microing them. Radio mortars are still hell of a scary unit, and the infantry, as I said, it got weaker, but it's still a good infantry tab. Like, don't get me wrong, basics and so on are still good. They are not amazing anymore, but they are still good. So if you like infantry divisions, then this is the best infantry division to go for the Allied side, maybe. So, 2nd Indianhead. Now we come a division that I expected to be way better than it is. Second New Zealanders have disappointed me. I don't know exactly where it is. I guess it's the predictability, as Nilla pointed out in the talks we had in the podcast. Because they're just not as good as you would expect if you just see what they have. Like, they have a solid air tab, they have a solid infantry tab with 2 leaders, 12-man infantry squad, which is just fine in its equipment. You have Shermans, but you don't have anything special in the tank tab. You don't have anything to help you out there. You have Stuarts if you want them, but that's not what helps you out. You don't get any 76s, no Fireflies or something like that. So that's an issue. Yeah, it's all just too predictable. Your enemy knows what will come for him. He knows you will spam up leaders. He knows you will spam Shermans. You don't have a lot of armored vehicles. You get the 30 cal carrier, but you don't get half tracks for your infantry, which is an issue in the current meta. So all of that leaves it in B tier. Then we go to second guards tank corps, and I would put that in B tier as well. T-30-45s are a good counter to the right division, and obviously everyone talks about how they destroy Panthers and Tigers, and if you would see that as the game that is important at the moment, then obviously that would be in S tier divisions, because T-34-85s destroyed Tigers and Panthers, that's for sure. But nobody plays Tigers and Panthers anyway, because everything else destroys them as well. So the more important thing is they destroy T-34s on medium ranges as well. And that's why they are B tier, because they're a good counter to some Sherman divisions on the right map. Like we saw with third guy, US Armored on Grey Fox's side versus second guard tank corps on Gonzo's side. But against all the other divisions, it's still not an amazing division. So it's a good counter division against good divisions at the moment. So that's why it's in B tier. But on its own, it's still only a mediocre division. Previously it was in C tier, now it's in B tier. Let's move on to a clear D tier. It pains me every time I have to put them here. And I wish they would be better than 1v1. But 350 seconds still just sucks. And I have no clue by now what to do about them and how to fix them with what is available. Maybe some free veterancy on some infantry. But the issue is just you can defend all day, all night. But once the enemy gets to a 1311, you just don't have anything to get back there and get the flag back. And it's just so sad. Like, you can't play aggressive with this deck at all. And at some point you have to win a game. So not being able to do that at all just kills the division. Now we come to 358, and maybe a bit of controversy here, because I would put that in C tier. And I know C tier shouldn't be controversial, but a lot of people say that this is the worst Soviet deck, and I disagree. Because it has the ISU 122S, and it has good fighters. Sure, the AA is hot garbage, but at least M17s are a bit better nowadays than they were previously. And you have P39s to at least win the air fight. You have IL-2s to win the air fight. And your artillery also, like, the thing you have to achieve with this division is both sides not having good AA. So if you use your artillery and your fighters and bombers to kill the enemy AA, and both of you have to fight that air war, then you can win with this division, because everything else in this division, other than the air problem, is pretty decent. It's not amazing. It doesn't have a lot of... it doesn't have Shermans or anything. It doesn't have a lot of half-tracks either. So that's why it's not higher. But if you can solve the air problem, and you have the potential to do so, as I said, with P39s, with IL-2s, and good artillery, then your deck is just fine. It's just a fine deck. It's in C tier. Here we go. Now we come to the Canadians. And I'm not sure why they have another background than the other allied divisions. But they are S tier still. And I would actually put them in front of 15 Scots. They still have Shermans, Fireflies, solid Spitfire bombers, and so on. Good AT tab, rifles, kangaroos, solid recon cars and stuff. Just a good division. It's really hard to nerf that division. It got nerfed quite a bit. It's not S+++++ as it was before. Before it was here up there somewhere in the ether. It's still a really good division though. And now we come to another really strong division in 3rd Guards Tank Corps, which just like 3rd Canadian doesn't want to get nerfed. Or like doesn't want to leave S tier. It gets nerfed. But whenever Sherman, as long as Shermans are viable, this division will be on top. It has half decks, it has a solid AA tab, it has maybe the biggest issue is the artillery tab. So that's its biggest flaw, but artillery doesn't really matter too much at the moment, so it's not a big flaw either. Air tab is decent as well. And you get enough infantry from tank division to hold on forever with that as well. You get your automatics, you get your Tank and Indianhead. That's all you need. Because you get Shermans and IS-2s that will carry you through the game together with a hell of a lot of half-tracks in front of them. So it's still the GOAT. 3rd Guards Tank Corps is still the GOAT. 3rd Mechanized is on the hunt. It is top 8 here at the moment. The only issue is when you run into one of these 3 divisions maybe. So that's why it's 8 tier. Like everything that has too heavy of an armor and you run into a Slutsk West and so on, then this division struggles. As we were able to see in Eugen versus JKV. Slutsk West, for example, is just not its map. But on all the other maps, this division is just so insanely cost efficient in the early game. Partisanis, MG42s, Shermans, couple of half-tracks, your Tank and Indianhead, Luck 3 bombers, which are really cost efficient as well. But if your enemy can hold on a map that is more defensive, you don't get better, and that's the issue why it isn't S tier. You don't have that last level up that you need to make to beat the enemy in the late game as well, and just make him completely quit the game. So if the enemy can hold on against you, then your division struggles a bit. But as long as you can keep trading and you have all the potential to do so in this deck, you most of the time will just win. So that's why it is on top of 8 tier. 3rd FJ jumps into actually early C tier. Come on. Can we swap you? Oh, okay, here we go. 3rd FJ has good FJs, has a solid AT tab, has AT planes at least, but they're not amazing. Has the L6s, but sadly also has only Stokes and has too little cheap infantry. And that's the big minus compared to 1st FJ. The missing out on the Grenadier MG42s or any other cheap, good 20-point infantry. Good, they Luftwaffe Jägers in B, but they are not good. And that's the issue there. That's why it is C tier. You have a really amazing, expansive infantry, and you have good everything around it, or like solid everything around it, with the LG42s in the support tab and so on. But it's not quite competitive enough, and that's why it is C tier. Now we come to another high-ranking A tier division in my eyes. I know a lot of people put it in S tier currently. I'm not 100% sold on it. I know the win rate is insane that it has in League, but the thing is, you usually only pick it on the maps where it is good. And it has too many maps where it is not quite as insane, like Cell and so on. This division is not as good as 15 Scots, 3rd Guards Tank Corps, or 3rd Canadian on those maps. But the issue of half-tracks at the moment being really strong makes this division so insanely good at the moment. And it is good against other Sherman's division as well, because other Sherman's divisions can't deal with the jumbos. The air tab is also decent. It's not amazing. T-51s are good air units, but they're also on the pricey end, and they don't have medium resilience. They only have bad resilience. So they are good, but not amazing, as I said. AA is also but this all still makes it a really good division because solid infantry in half-tracks, plus a good combination of Shermans, the 76s, plus I'll give it a bit more potential to punch up than compared to a second New Zealanders. And the jumbos just make situations awkward for the enemy a lot of times, and they have to do the right combos to deal with them. And if they don't, they just collapse against your jumbos. So that's why it is an A tier division. Then we come to third tier VD, and this one goes straight into B tier. And I still think it is a really good deck on the right map, and smoke off map and so on really make it good. It has the best CQC infantry in the game if it comes to mass availability ones. The Deshantnikis for 15 points are just insanely strong, and you shouldn't sleep on them. Especially when with the smoke off map and smoke mortars out of the 120mm mortars with radio. 120mm with radio is another big plus. You can just get the CQC engagements all around the map. T-34s are fine as well. You get them in big enough numbers to get you 3A and B tiers. The slight issue of that division is that currently games tend to get a little longer again, and this division really wants to end the game early, but you can force it. Your air tab also has nice planes in it. Your AA tab supports that well enough with 37mm from A phase onward, and so you just can rush the enemy really well, and it is one of the best rush divisions. So don't sleep on it. Then 44th comes in C tier. It just isn't anything special. Like, there's not much to talk about this division. It's, if you want to teach someone how Soviet divisions in general look like in this game, show them 44th. It's the most average Soviet division that you can potentially find. And that is fine, but it just makes C phase. Now we come to 5th Cavalry, and it has fallen out of S tier. It has slipped quite hard because it doesn't have half tracks, and airplay isn't as important anymore. But it still has the best infantry tab in the game. It still has a good air tab, and its tank tab and AT tab combined with the Rigidas and so on can stop medium tanks well enough that I would still put it into A tier. You still have to play it a bit differently than the other divisions here in A tier, and it's actually tough. I guess it's better than... No, actually, yeah, it must be above 17th SS, so I would put it here. It's just a really well-rounded division. Motorisata, here we go. Then 5th Panzer, and this is the only... No, it's not the only German Panzer division, but the only real German Panzer division in my eyes that goes into C tier. It has half tracks, it has everything, like... But it just makes it... It just has everything a bit less than the top tier tank divisions, like 12th SS, like 20th Panzer, like 21st. It just doesn't have anything that gets it on top of... it has Panzer Force and so on, but it's just a really predictable division that is not just... that doesn't have that one thing that makes it more cost efficient. And with that, it still struggles with the cost efficiency that other Panzer divisions don't struggle with anymore. Now we come to the 5th SS, and that's the only German Panzer division that is weaker than that, because it isn't really a Panzer division in my eyes. It doesn't have enough Panzer Force. Its infantry is rather iffy. Its air tab is not that good. And yeah, actually, let's put it here. I mean, you have solid stuff still, and the cheaper Panzer Grenadiers help out, but still doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go deep enough for the long runs. It doesn't have enough cost-efficient stuff. It doesn't have T-34 85 Model 44, but only Model 43, so that's a big issue compared to, for example, Panzer Division that we will see later that gets the 44 model, which is really strong at the moment. So it just goes into C tier. Then we come to 6 Airborne, which has dropped off into the end of A tier. If the enemy lets you play your air game, he will just still lose, because Tempests are amazing, but in the current half-track meta, this division struggles too much against that to be considered S tier or top of A tier. It's A minus because infantry is still good, air is still amazing, AT tab is okay, but you just don't have medium tanks, and you don't have enough stuff to deal with half-tracks cost efficiently, and that's the issue. If you can force the game long enough, your air will still utterly destroy everything out there. But getting the game long enough is tougher than it was back in the day. So 8 here we go. Also the air got a bit nerfed, so that is that as well. Then we come to 78th Sturm. And that made a bit of a revival. It was D tier before, but with the latest buffs to it, with the buffs to the Nashorns, and the buff towards infantry tab, with actually finally having an affordable infantry, and Schützen still being a good division unit as well, as they have MG42s. And MG44 units also getting a bit more play lately. Again, it's C tier. It has Flak 43s. It is a turtle division. And if you turtle right with it, your enemy will be frustrated as hell, but offensive play still beats defensive play on average, so that's why it goes into C tier. Now, 7th mech, and that one goes right in here. It is just such a well-rounded division. It isn't insanely broken, but it has access to everything you need as a Soviet division. It's the creme de la creme of Soviet equipment, and that's why it goes in A tier. It just doesn't have that half-track IS-2 34 spam that makes it the next level, but everything it has is cost efficient, and that's what makes you A tier. Now we come to 84th, and that's a C tier. That's another division down here where it is fine. It has a lot of nice tools, but it just doesn't have enough medium tanks, and the IS-2s don't carry you anymore. So that's why it goes here. Like, infantry tab is fine, AA tab is fine, artillery tab is okay, air tab is okay, but you don't have anything super sneaky in recon, and tank tab is too reliant on IS-2s, and IS-2s don't win games in 1v1 anymore. So that's why C tier is where it belongs to. Now we come to another B tier division. 97th Guards, which has some really, really nice tools, and it has its own playstyle. It is a division that can go to long game, that fits into the current meta of what's it called again? Vanguard? Is it Vanguard? Where you play your Vanguard division a bit more like balanced, and a bit longer, and obviously its off map is just really, really, really nasty, but it doesn't have anything insanely strong. So yes, after 10 bans, obviously there a lot of stuff up here gets eliminated, then 97th becomes a lovely pick for League, but only at that point. Then we come to 9th, which is the weakest German division in the game right now, because it only has Germans for the tank thing. It doesn't have enough stuff to deal with heavies, or heavier tanks. And its infantry, even though it's still really cheap, it's the worst cheap infantry in the game maybe at the moment. Kazachis are just not good. Because they're 9-man, 20-point infantry with a weak MG. And they're just not strong enough in CQC anymore, because yeah, it's 9-man squads are just not good enough. So B tier it goes. half-tracks it struggles with a bit. It doesn't have a good air tab. It still has that one card of Cavalry SVTs, and the Cavalry Mosins for 15 points are also decent, but just doesn't have it anymore. It was A tier before, but at the moment only Shermans also isn't really the way to go. With T-45 and so on around, that's just not the way to win anymore. And Panzer IV is also being competitive enough there. Just not the way to go anymore, so B tier we go. Now let's go into D tier, where we have the Armia Craiova. And that one is just fine in D tier, because it just doesn't have anything that is good at the moment. Its infantry is okay on paper, but it is too expensive. Doesn't have AA, air tab is not good enough, tank tab, Panthers and Tigers, what the hell, in low numbers, like, yeah, and light tanks that just don't do anything, so, sorry, Armia Craiova, but D tier it is. I hope you get better at some point, but at the moment it is just not good. And there's not much worse than it at the moment in the game. Then we have MGB, and that is somewhere here as well. I would put it in D tier as well currently, because it is a fun division, but it is too predictable in what it does thanks to the limitations it gets, only getting all its stuff in B phase. Its infantry is okay, but it's a bit worse than 126 maybe. Maybe it's like, yeah, no, it depends on how you play it, but this division just, the air tab is nice, but it's not amazing either. So D tier, here we go, because against half decks and medium tanks you just die at the moment, and it's just completely outplayed by the current meta. If the meta was still the infantry meta, it would be C tier, higher up in C tier, but with the current meta it just completely dies against it. So now we come to Bitstock Logo, and that one goes into C tier as well. It goes before, yeah, it goes there, because it just doesn't have anything odd going on either. It's has too little, and since the IL-2's got a bit nerfed in its deck, this deck just doesn't have it anymore. It still has a nice amount of Soviet stuff, which is kind of cost efficient, so it's not completely down, but it's still only lower end of C tier. Then Nindata comes in, which currently fits right here into B tier. It has still a lot of Panzer IVs, it has the cheap mortars, it has a solid air, but doesn't have enough half tracks. Its infantry is okay, but not amazing. And if you have to pick a German Panzer division, often you will end up with it currently, because the bands will take out the others. And it is still a good B tier division. So it's still a German Panzer division that is competitive, but it isn't A tier anymore. So another in B we go. Then we come to Harteneck. And I'm struggling with that one. It's somewhere here, like B or D or C. I guess I will put it in the end of C, because it doesn't have half tracks. It has solid amount of infantry, and the infantry got buffed, so that's why it is, I guess, C tier again. But the AA is just atrocious. It doesn't have good air to compensate that either. And Tigers and Stooks are not something you really want either at the moment. So yes, you have good infantry. At least you have combined arms in the tank tab. But that's kind of it. Like, and so lower end of C tier is where we go, because everything with mass air can counter you, and everything with a lot of half tracks and medium tanks also kind of counters you. So that's why C phase is where it belongs. Its AT options are okay, but not much more than that. Then we come to Hermann Göring, which is the best B tier German division. It isn't A tier anymore. It is still rather good in what it does, though. But Tigers are an issue. Jagdpanzer IVs currently, the issue is not being able to put veterancy on them is a bit of a biggie. And they are good against Germans, but with more and more German Panzer divisions coming around, they struggle quite a bit more against Panzer IVs, especially on medium ranges. So that's the issue there, I think. With more and more Axis mirrors, Harteneck gets worse. And yeah, that's the issue for Harteneck. Then we come to Kuruk, which is up here in the topper end of C tier. Issue, medium tanks are a bit of a struggle, but you can deal with them. You have the most affordable air tap that is really, really strong. JOT-75s in the early game just wreck. You have obviously the insane amount of infantry spam that can come around and just hurt the enemy and just run him over if he isn't careful. On Cell, this division just absolutely rocks still. But obviously, not having half tracks, having to struggle with medium tanks without a GOT-7 G1 to kill them off in the skies. HS-129s are okay-ish by now, thanks to the small buffs they got, but they're still not something you really want to take. And then, yes, you have the 2 Tigers, or like the 1 card of Tigers, with 2-star urgency, and a bit better availability than normal 2-star Tigers. And yes, you have your couple of T-34s, which is helpful, and the AT tab is not completely horrible either, but it's just not quite enough to compete with the medium tank divisions, and half tracks are really, really scary at the moment. Sicherungs and so on help a bit against that with their AT rifles, but they're not amazing against that either. So really, you have to fear the wrath of the armor divisions when you play Kuruk. You have to hope that your J-75s and so on win you the Airborne, you can bully the enemy from the skies. Or you play Cell and just swarm the enemy with Shupos. So that's the 2 options for Kuruk at the moment. Then we get Lovash, which is a bit above Harteneck at the moment. Its infantry is decent enough again. All these and so on are just not really good with the amount of medium tanks flying around at the moment. Like, when Lovash was good, that was when the IS-2 meta was around, and when you could just swarm the enemy with with light tanks. And its infantry got nerfed as well since then. So it's okay, but it's not really the division we want to play at the moment. It has fallen off quite a bit. The Hungarians are just not that competitive at the moment. 4th Munte. If you would get the stuff you get in B in A, this division would be really, really great. But you just died too often in A. And that's why I put it in C. In B. If you can just get into B into a nice state, then after B, you just do well. But you're a bit too predictable with the limitations you have. And it's a bit too easy to kill that division in A before its Panzer IVs and so on show up. Its infantry is good though. It has that 15-man Molotov unit and so on. So C tier is still fine. But it struggles a bit too much with the medium tanks push in the early game at the moment, and that's why it is C tier. Now, Panzer Divisiona. And that's just behind 2nd Guards Tank Corps at the moment. I would say it has T-34-85s as well. It has a good air tap. It has infantry tap that is a bit too small in my eyes. And the tank tap is nice because it has all these units, but also you can't rely on it completely because you run out of stuff too quickly. So at some point when you want to have your more KV1s, then you just don't have enough KV1s anymore and so on. So it's funny that, and also nice that you have all these different tanks, but it's a bit too unreliable in that regard to be 8 here. Though the tanks it gets are still really strong at the moment, and your carries are solid infantry as well still, with the Molotovs and so on. So, B tier it is. It's on the lower end of the armored divisions at the moment. This also doesn't get half tracks and so on, but the air and the tanks and so on keep it in B tier. Panzerlehr comes in right here. It has Pumas, it has Focke-Wulfs, and everything else is just what you want to have from a Panzer division. Sure, it doesn't have King Tigers anymore like in Normandy, but King Tigers are just a nice extra on top. Maybe with King Titus it would be an A tier, but I'm not even sure about that. But it's currently just a Assault Division. Then, Rima Rapana, another C tier division currently, as infantry meta was where it shined. It has a good air tab, has a really scary infantry tab if you run into it in Cell or an Orsha East or an Orsha North. But on open maps, this division just gets completely clapped, and it struggles with the medium tanks. That's all there is to say. Skieger, sure, it has a high win rate, but it's still just a D tier division. It just doesn't do much. It's still one of the decks that struggles the most with card availability. Skiegers are only meh infantry. The air tab is not that hot. AA is a huge issue still for it. So D tier is where it still goes. It got some nice buffs, and that's why it's not on the end of D tier anymore, but it's only gotten up in D tier in a while. Tartalek, it stays the meme. I'm not even sure how to really fix that deck. I guess it's again buffing the infantry, and I guess with a more infantry meta, Tartalek might get somewhere, but there's just always a better deck. Like, so there's never a point for Tartalek other than for a silly meme. But even that is only silly because it doesn't have a cool meme either. It's just, oh yeah, I played Tartalek, that's the meme. And then you look at your boring infantry, your boring Stooks, and you're like, well, nice that I started this meme, but it gets me nowhere. So yeah, Tartalek is still on the end of the list. Turina is a Assault Division. It's nothing else though. So yeah, Turina is Turina. It's always like Turina and Bitsuk logo, always hard to talk about. 44th also comes in there a bit. They're just the Soviet triangle of being average. Like, with Bitsuk logo being the weakest because of availability issues. But other than that, Turina gets higher than these two in my eyes, but it doesn't do much else. And then in the end, we have Vyborg, which also goes in C tier. I would put it higher than Koruk because the T26s are, the one card of T34s is a bit of an issue, but you get T26s and IS2s, which are good. Your air tab is pretty solid, and your infantry tab is short, but what you get is fine. You get 2 cuts of channels, you get your automatikis, and so on. So if you play the air right, if you play the tanks correctly as well, it is an okay division, but it is obviously also one that you just know what the enemy is getting. So if you play against it, it's still kind of easy to counter. So C tier is where it goes. So that is my tier list, my current one, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have anything that you want to add, and obviously keep the discussion up down below. And as I said, Time to Collisions video should be up soon. You will find it down below. Otherwise, just subscribe to his channel and see when it goes up. And maybe watch ours talking more about tier list and other stuff in the league, in the podcast that you also can find on Time to Collisions Twitch channel. And yeah, here's just a quick look for everyone who is interested in how that tier list will look like. And that is what the community ended up on. So I'm a bit off of that, but I still agree with a lot of things here, as you can see. Only 50 Scots is a bit low, for example, but most of the other things I agree with as well. So see you all around, and have nice discussions down there, and don't be too harsh on me. Stay positive. See you next time.